Hello and welcome again to yet another Junior on the buses. Now, it's yet another Eastbourne classic bus weekend, and you can tell that it's a classic bus because look, you've got cigarette stubbers behind the seats. So we know that this is a bus from the days before smoking bans, the days when smoking on the bus was totally normal, and you get a smoking seat. And it's kind of a nice way to see Eastbourne. We're a little bit old-fashioned, which is one of the things I like about this town. And we're on quite an old-fashioned bus. So we're going up to the Meads is kind of the more expensive part of Eastbourne. And I actually used to live here. I wasn't expensive, I lived in a bedsit with my other half. But this is in my hotel days. I used to have to trudge all the way up this road from the town centre with the shopping, because the convenience stores in Meads were not cheap. They may have been convenient, but they were not cheap. And we are coming up now to, I believe, a particularly notorious cottage. It's officially been closed a long time, but they used to be, that's it, in the trees there, and they used to be queues of cottaging gentlemen on Saturday lunchtimes in particular. Me and my other half, we used to see it with the cars lined up. I remember one time in about 1991, this fella, he got on like a designer leather jacket, got his ride done up, and his combed hair and adjusted his sunglasses before going for a pee, and I thought, well, that's not the real reason he's in there. But I kind of brought that up because, again, it's very last century, like this bus. Smoking on buses, indecency in toilets, it's all kind of that era. And I don't give away people's addresses, but this is not far from where Lillian lives. She lives in this part of Eastbourne. Well, when she's in this country, she lives in this part of Eastbourne, and her home is rather fabby. I like it a lot. It's a very Julia sort of place. It's very comfy because it's obviously being a classic bus, a new bus. Lots of memories. The part of Eastbourne has lots of memories for me because me and my other half, Chris, living here and things, which is over 25 years ago now. We were in like the one not very well off block in a very well off part of town, which is it's slightly a strange experience. You know, we weren't wealthy, our neighbours weren't wealthy, but the rest of the street was. Proper Eastbourne, all this proper Eastbourne. There is St Andrew's School. My aunt used to work at St Andrew's School, and I actually went there for a short while in the 70s, which was not particularly good from memory, but I won't blame them for that. It was well over 40 years ago. Oh, another classic bus coming. I think this is kind of the Eastbourne people think of when they think of it as a bit more polite, a bit more sedate. And this is kind of how they visualise us, and I have no problem with that. There we are.
Some very boner luxury latties with seafront views.
Now to Prince's Park, which is where we're going to hold Pride again this year. Well, it will actually be Pride this year, not just Mardi Gras, but Pride. And the last few shinings. Most of this, if you've seen my previous films, you will know. But it's all a bit more retro today because we are riding now on a classic bus.
Now this is the pier end. We're past the big hotels and we're where the private hotels, B&Bs and guest houses are. There's a very retro feel to today, and indeed we got retro animals, look. They say Eastbourne's old-fashioned, and we have dinosaurs. We're still a bit behind the rest of the world in Eastbourne. We've reached Prince's Park, so now we're turning round. Classic bus, boom, 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 classic bus. Well, indeed, this classic bus could have been the Who's Magic Bus, because it was built, I think, in 66 or 67, which makes it about the same age as Heather and myself. And that line, 7 and 6, just to see my baby. Actually, people probably did pay 7 and 6 old money to ride on this bus. It's got a certain magic, I think, for that reason. Now we're heading back towards Mead Street. I used to live in Mead Street with my boyfriend Chris in the early 90s, and our block was a bit of an eccentric block. We had Bob, who was a retired shepherd from Ulster, and he used to steal pot plants out of back gardens, but only dead ones. We used to watch him climb over the walls and collect them. And in fact, Chris said he'd been up there and he got loads of them. We had Jock and Martin, who liked to drink. They had a terrapin called Terry Pin. That was their pet. That was their flat. We're just going past it now. And there were some stoners upstairs who were always covering the place in chocolate wrappers because they always had the munchies. Now, just round here was the Meads Men's Club, and Chris and I, when we'd had a drink, used to sometimes say, "Oh, Meads Men's Club, same some for us, dear." But in fact, Heather actually worked at Meads Men's Club for a while. Shortly after I left Chris, I unfortunately left Chris because he robbed their own electric meter to buy wine. That was indeed the Meads Club, now sadly a skeleton. Now this, you have classic bus, and this is classic bus queue. It wouldn't be a classic bus without a classic bus queue.
You do not see upholstery this nice on buses today. Something very, very good about all this floral patterns, fabric, and the wonderful upholstery. This was an era of a bit more class.
And it's nice to be up here in order to see the beautiful ironwork of Eastbourne Railway Station. Now we're pulling out the town, out into the countryside, and getting above Eastbourne. You can see the South Cliff Tower there, prominently featured in the film Battle of Britain, although it was built about 20 years after the war. Oh, Weston's quality biscuits, but that begs the question, are they good quality? You know, they might be Weston's poor quality biscuits, we just don't know. And here we're going off towards Beltoot. I hope they don't have to move it again. Very, very big palaver last time that they had to move it a few years ago. I remember seeing that. There we are going past. Quite a nice picture of it up there. And towards Birling Gap at last. And the stop. Now here we are off at Birling Gap. And this is where it gets a bit more interesting because we had to walk back. We couldn't get a classic bus or any other kind of bus to get us back, so we were going to have to walk, which was not exactly what I planned. And unfortunately, I was wearing a pair of dance pumps because I'd just got off work and I didn't realise I was going to have to walk it.
Now these are the famous Birling Gap Coastguard cottages, and as you can see, they are somewhat truncated because over the years the cliff has moved up a bit, and consequently some of the cottages have had to be taken down, and slowly the row is actually getting smaller, which is kind of a bit of a sobering thought. Oh, the ice cream's breaking.
This is where I'm from, really. This is the proper south of England. This is home. And it's just nice because holiday atmosphere. It's the summer. It's not this much fun in the winter. It's got a certain bleak magic even then. Now this wood makes me think of one of the scholarly ghost stories of M.R. James. I think if Dr. James had been around, he'd have made up a story to go with it. It looks that kind of place. Not necessarily creepy, far from it, very pleasant, but interesting and magical. What was less magical was the state of my feet in those dance pumps, which luckily did survive the dance pumps. They took the odd scuff, but my feet were not all that grand afterwards. And there you see Sussex by the sea. There are the South Downs. That is the sea. It's what it's all about. Now, my wide-awake hat there was making me look like a cross between a Brazilian bandit and Orinoco from the Wombles. Always my favourite Womble, possibly because he was the campest. Ah, home, Eastbourne. It's in sight at last, and I must admit I was glad to see it. Just above the golf course, and I'm thinking I want a route home with cider involved in it.
Hello again, and if I look a little bit dishevelled, I have just walked back from Birling Gap, which is quite a way, and I insisted on having cider when I got back here. It was not quite like ice cold in Alex, but I definitely wanted cider, having walked back all that way. But I saw a great deal of Sussex. And I think this is what summer down here in Civic Sussex is all about.